Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions today. First time on the show is Joe Lamborghini. Hopefully, Joe, I've got that right. I've been practicing it in my head. But Joe, welcome to the show for the first time. Do you want to give the audience a little bit of background on yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Danny. It's been definitely like sort of a little dream of mine to be on your podcast. So thank you so much for inviting me. So for the people who haven't heard from me before, my name is Joe Lamborghini. I'm the founder of Amazing Wave, which is an AI consultancy for e-commerce sellers. I have been in the digital marketing and e-commerce space for about 13 years. And in this time, I've worn many hats. I've been agency side, I've been aggregator side, I've run a vendor agency, and now I'm doing sort of like the very geeky AI consultancy. And I'm also the publisher of the AI for e-commerce newsletter, which is read by more than 13,000 subscribers to date. And I am also the co-host of the New Frontier podcast, which is all about AI in e-commerce. So I talk about AI a lot.
Excellent. And obviously it's on trend at the moment. A lot of people talk about AI hacks, various different models, etc. But today, what we're talking about, we're going to try and break a few things out differently, right? And so you put some stuff together. So do you want to give the audience a quick overview of what we're covering today?
Yeah, sure. So the more I talk with sellers, the more I realize that AI is used definitely to a large extent for text-based outputs, for image generation, but actually not very many people have experimented with using AI for data analysis. And because of that, I actually think that a lot of sellers are missing really big opportunity to get under the skin of their performance, to like find new trends in their categories, and actually just use AI for so very many things in terms of analysis. So today I would love us to talk more about how you can use AI for data analytics.
Excellent. So what we're kicking off with?
Well, I think the first thing to actually kick off is just understanding what large language models are. And because I think this will set the scene in terms of sellers understanding what they can use them for, what they can use them for, and like where does the AI data piece comes in. So I guess the first thing that people obviously know in the back of their mind, but I always like to remind people about is that large language models are very good at text-based outputs, and that's why a lot of people use them. They are large language models, so by the way they are created, they have been trained on billions of example text of data, and because of that, they are incredibly good at predicting text-based outputs. Now, with that, they are not like by default very good at maths. So in this case, you probably are asking, well, Joe, why are we talking about AI or data analytics? Because obviously, data analytics is underpinned a lot of the times by numerical data. And actually, what is really interesting is how these large language models, such as GPT or Claude, have essentially adopted a analytics function as part of their functionality. So they have sort of kind of extensions to the large language models, which are based off, for example, Python or JavaScript. And that is how essentially they get through that kind of more analytical, I guess, acumen.
But what's the best way to approach this? You're not a programmer. You just mentioned Java and Python, which are popular programming languages, but not everyone are, right? And obviously we've got these no-code platforms now that we can use.
Yeah, so this is the thing, like the beauty of AI models is that you don't have to be a programmer, you don't have to understand code. The cool thing is that you can get code even if you're not. And like that is one really powerful thing when it comes to like data analysis is like, before like some advanced data analytics, you have to like get someone to write your code that then runs and like analyzes like very large sets of data. This is now possible by just using natural language processing. So you can just say to, let's say, if your chatbot of choice is ChatGPT, you can say, this is what I'm trying to do. How would you go about it? And then the chatbot will then write down, let's say, either formula or a script or code, which you then can use. So that's kind of like, I guess, the first thing. But even if you, like, let's say you don't want to even touch code, the cool thing is that you can still very much manipulate Excel spreadsheets, just CSV files within the interface of these chatbots, and then use that data to and basically use AI to analyze that data.
Gotcha. Cool. Where do you want to go next? What else are we going to be covering?
Yeah, so I think it's basically the first thing I want to always talk about is different chatbots and understanding the different strengths of chatbots in terms of data analysis, because I think obviously when it comes to everybody talking about AI, especially in our industry, there's a lot of conversations about ChatGPT. This is obviously the most well-known chatbot, and of course with a reason. But there is also a lot of good alternatives, and for me, like one of the main best alternatives that people don't necessarily use, but it's amazing, is Claude.
Yeah.
And the reason why I mentioned Claude is because that is an incredible large language model from a text point of view in terms of analyzing text-based data. So if I am to, a lot of people talk about review analysis, which in our industry is gold. You get a lot of insights. You can map out who your customer is and get a lot more data. Now, I've done many tests where I, for example, use ChatGPT to analyze review data, and I use Claude to analyze the review data, and I want to see, okay, which one is actually giving me more insight. And every time, the same thing happens. Claude understands semantically, basically instances of mentions in the reviews, versus ChatGPT, which just counts the instances. So to give you, just to make it clearer, we talked a little bit before that we started this, you said beard conditioner and beard oil might not be clear synonyms, but in this instance, where ChatGPT and Claude will be analyzing the reviews, Claude will know that these are synonyms and will group them as one instance, versus ChatGPT, which will basically count the number of mentions of beard oil, beard conditioner, etc., etc. So this becomes really powerful, especially when people are really trying to understand which are the most important, for example, benefits, which are the most kind of vexing negatives that people are dealing with in terms of product, which are the use cases, because we are not talking about frequency of mentions. We're talking about actually, if you are analyzing a data of, let's say, 2,000, 3,000 reviews, you really get a picture of, on as a whole, which is the most common benefit, negative, etc. So that is where I think Claude is incredible. Have you used it?
Yes, I've been flicking through the two of them. When I used to use Comprehend based around the sentimental scoring, Claude was very good at that. You could just cut and paste and it picked up the context straight away, and it knew that I wanted to increase the sentiment score. But since we've been obviously developing and learning more about it and entities and the commercial tags, etc., then you rely less on the sentiment score because you're structuring your quantities, your commercial tag, etc. And what I found to compare that to ChatGPT is that I could, because of the chat history, I would just cut and paste the scoring back into Claude, and Claude will go, okay, let's go again. And then it will redo it to trying to increase it. It had diminishing returns when it went, the other way. So instead of the number going up, it went back down. But that was a clear instance there where I would use Claude, or I did use Claude for that. So, but I don't tend to compare platforms enough. There's a huge amount going on. But I was going to ask you some questions about where you think it's going with images and the training rails for those. If you look at search results pages, it's a sea of same. So what will happen, you look at someone like Zule Kitchen, go and have a look at Zule Kitchen and go and look at their milk frother. What you got them who's got world-class images, and then you've got a load of shitty other products with substandard images behind it because they don't have a world-class design team, right? So I think where we're going with the creative side and the image side with AI, you must mix it with the talent.
I think this is so great, and I actually I completely agree with you. The reality is that I have found that using AI has made me much more creative in terms of like the way I think about different use cases and combining different inputs. So that's the one thing that I find AI has like jacked into my brain is that of course there is pre-existing processes and knowledge about how things are done, but with AI, it's like challenged me to like really almost combine like so much of out of what I know, like get out of that box and find different inputs. Like if it's just a different channel or different, I guess, like version of the data, if we're talking about data, and see when I input it into like an AI chatbot and use AI, like what kind of insight I can get for that. So I think there is definitely a case that AI can make the human more creative, but I completely agree. You can't expect that AI is going to create something truly creative and truly unique that people would really connect with. I write my newsletter like every week, and one of the patterns that I keep seeing is a conversation around the fact that AI is turning off people because it's not authentic, it's not genuine. And part of it is because it doesn't provide anything new. And I think over time, like more and more of that authenticity of the new, fresh creativity is going to become more and more valuable. Like, I have this conversation. I always think about like, creative agencies, and a lot of people when Midjourney came out were like, this is it. This is the death of the creative agencies. This is the death of the
No,
photographers. Da da da.
they'll
No,
be the
it's
best
not.
to harness it because they've got domain
Yeah,
knowledge. That's the
yeah,
thing.
exactly,
You're going to get more out of it if you've got domain knowledge. So,
exactly.
like it clearly people know is because of the spelling mistakes in some of my copy that I will mix with AI just to correct my spelling and grammar because I'm not very good at it, right? So it
Mm,
doesn't turn me into a novelist or anything, but I have to find creative ways to fix some of my weaknesses. But
yeah.
what you'd use it for is, what about if we did this and mix it with that? So I see AI, there's grunt work that can be done, there's efficiency, and then when you find that blend between creativity and using AI for some of the heavy lifting, great, right? And I also find that people with domain skill are going to be better using
Mm,
any of these models because they've got the nuance of the knowledge, which is helping shaping the response and the output that comes back, right? So if
yeah.
you're, let's say that you're a designer and you're using Leonardo, right? And you've been mastering Photoshop, Illustrator, etc., for decades. A couple of things that happens here is that you would understand what you're trying to achieve, so you'll be able to write it in the language of a designer. Now, the blind side of the designer is going to be is they have their best practices and their expertise, and because they're good at what they do, they're not open for some upstarts to come along, like an Amazon seller, and go, "No, we've got to pop the shit out of that image. No, but it's oversaturated. No, they'll love it. It will stop the scroll." And then when you mix the two together, you've got a designer who gets pushback, who would do things they would never normally do, but the technical ability. And then you've got the other person. This is why the engineer and the producer works really well. Because the producer says, no, I want it. Well, you can't do that with sound. You can't mix it. I want the snare higher. And then the club is rocking. So what happens is that crossroads. So you can take the inquisitive and the person with less knowledge knows what they want from one angle. So it's the crossroads.
No, I think this is the thing. I think like what is really interesting and what I'm kind of experimenting now is, well, if we go back to our original topic, is around gaining data from like basically, let's say Excel inputs, like basically review data and getting insight from that to inform, for example, what's in your image. So you can have like a data driven like base for an image. based off your reviews. And I think that's really interesting use of AI. But yeah, I think pure creativity is not going to happen just by using AI.
Well, yeah, basically, if we're to dial back 10,000 feet, one, you've got to know what you want and its outcome.
Yeah.
And then the second one, you're going to want to know what it wants. And then you've got to find a way of articulating and asking the right way to get what you want.
Yeah, but I think this point is really essential. I think articulation is key. And I think one needs to really pay attention to how they structure what they're asking for, and even just the language that they use when they're asking for it. Just to give you a simple example from this afternoon, I was trying to categorize a certain number of keywords based off like given amount of like categories that I wanted to analyze. And my first prompt, I was a little lazy. I had written the first kind of couple of categories, and then I just kind of went for a shortcut. I just said, I just actually typed in, rather than saying keyword or search term, I said product, because obviously, like, you know, the search terms are about products, right? But it had a dramatic effect, because when it started giving me the categories output, instead of the large language model, instead of categorizing the existing search terms that were in the data set, what it did is started analyzing what the product is and giving me its own analysis of what this product is by the categories. I don't know if that made sense, but
Yes.
instead of showing me the data that is already existing, it's kind of coming up with new data based off just one word. And once I changed that and I made it clear that I'm just looking for categorization, gave me everything perfectly. But this is where I think people really need to think about what exactly they're building within the prompt, how they're building it, how they are like specifically inputting even simple things like if you're using an Excel spreadsheet, like how are you inputting and defining the titles of the columns, like how are you defining the formulas within the sheet, so that actually the AI really knows the context and really knows what you're asking for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, we can complicate things. We can make it sound very sophisticated and, you know, I use AI. But the reality is everyone's got their hands on it.
That's how I said.
No, but you know what I mean? It's like...
I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, if someone says, I'm an expert, and they've been doing it 2 years, what would you say? You know, I mean, that's what we've got to be careful of, you know, is like, it's been around a couple of years. Well, it's not that it's been around a couple of years. It's been popularized in the last couple of years, you know? So I think we have to be a bit careful, because I think if someone said to an Amazon seller, yeah, I'm an expert, I've been doing it 2 years, they'll go, mate, that don't make you an expert. Go and put another 5 in and we'll have a chat, you know? But that's the thing, when new things come along, TikTok and stuff like that, and so I think we have to be careful of running away with ourselves, right? Keep our own egos in check, and then go, all right, how do we make the most of it out of this? And how do we save our most precious asset, which is our time and our attention? Isn't it? Yeah. Right? So it comes back to, what do you want and how are you going to get it? And what do you need to do to meet your needs? And that's it, really, if we were to dial back without all the flashy language and stuff. Because I think a lot of people shying away, older generation will shy away from AI. They've never used it. And there's a younger generation that don't touch it. My daughter, she's 18. She uses it, but a boyfriend, he went, no, I've never used ChatGPT. And I'm like, fucking hell, you're like 20 and you've never used it. Because we live in a bubble. What are you doing? Yeah. So there is some gap there, and I think it's going to be highly adopted and stuff. But I think, like you said, is that in the beginning, we're all pumping out this generic shit at the beginning because we're excited about it. But then you become more refined in, like, now you can read stuff on LinkedIn or wherever it may be. I mean, I use AI all the time. Like my show notes, I've written bots for, because I can't write for shit. I'd rather spend time interviewing people, editing, doing the production, getting the team to do their bits, the thumbnails, than sitting writing copy that I'm shit at doing, right? So, and I don't see the value in a show notes. They're there to explain to someone. If you're going to watch a video or you're listening back on the podcast, are you going to sit there and read 1,000, 2,000 words? No, you look at the title, you look at the first few lines, you go, yeah, I'll look at that because they've got better things to do than read War and Peace before they press play. Do you understand what I mean? So I look at the...
I have to tell you, like, I sometimes do this though. Like, I sometimes take the notes or the transcript, I push them through AI, and then
I do it all the time. I'm not ashamed of it. I can't spell for shit. What am I going to do? Do you want badly spelt stuff, or do you want some information there to tell you what's in the show, right? So I've obviously prompted it so it doesn't say things like transformative and all the usual bollocks, but
revolutionary,
revolutionary, game changing. Yeah. So I've got, it doesn't do any of that, but the idea is behind it is I want you to watch the video, not read the show notes, and I want you to listen to the podcast, and hopefully there's some good information in there. And I ain't going to sit there wasting your time and my time writing 2,000 words. So do you understand? So it's like I use that for my deficit because I'm shit at spelling. Right?
Yeah.
And so there's another tool there, isn't there? The tool is what are you not good at? Great. Can you use AI for that? Yeah, great. Or can you get someone else to use AI for that? But it doesn't do everything every time across the board, or it doesn't give you domain knowledge. That is something that you earn. And as I've explained to people with AI, it's like, if you've got domain knowledge on something and someone hasn't got domain knowledge in something, you're going to win.
You know, I started talking about Claude. I wanted to then sort of go into what ChatGPT is good for.
The conversation we're having is very much leaning, you love Claude, right? Not Claude himself, but you love the LLM. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the thing. I love ChatGPT as well. Like, you know, they're good. It's just in different ways.
I won't tell him. It's fine. You can like Claude.
Well, you know, I've been very public. I've been on Isabella Ritz's podcast recently, and I was gushing over Claude, and she was like, "Your husband will be probably quite jealous," and I was like, "Yeah, probably." But yeah, so ChatGPT is great because it's actually very good at numerical data analysis. So what I mentioned before is Claude is great when it comes to text. So, and another thing that Claude is great with is actually visualizing data. So just actually, before I start talking about ChatGPT, one final thing. So Claude has this wonderful function called artifacts. So you can, like, it can be used in many different ways. You can use it to like write code. You can use it to create HTML web pages, like build prototypes of apps. Even like, you know, people have built prototypes of little games. So there's just a lot of things that you can do with it. But one of the things that I find super useful, especially if you are trying to understand data in a visual way, is to put your data into Claude and essentially get it to build a reporting dashboard. And it's really incredible, especially if you input the data in the correct way. Claude is very intuitive in terms of what it needs to build in terms of visualization. And it also creates it interactive. So you, for example, yesterday I was visualizing a keyword report for like ranking, and it created it in a way where I could have like typed in the specific keyword I was looking for and basically filtered out just that data. And so it's super interactive, and you can just either immediately share that artifacts page, so it's like kind of like an individual page, or you can copy the code which Claude gives you, and you can plop it in like a page on your own website or whatever. So it is just really nice way to visualize data. So that's Claude. ChatGPT is brilliant because it like the sort of the data analytics extension that it uses is Python, and Python is just a little bit better than JavaScript in terms of like kind of AI analysis, data analysis. It just, I mean, again, I'm not an expert in this, but it just uses, from what I've read, it like uses a wider library of different like kind of data analytics extensions. And because of that, when it comes to numerical analysis, it's far superior. The other thing that I really love about ChatGPT, and I think is super useful, is that it can actually output an Excel spreadsheet for you. So Claude can't do that right now. It basically outputs a table which you have to copy paste and then include in your own Excel spreadsheet, while ChatGPT can do your entire bidding, like do exactly what you want it to do in terms of the data processing, and then give you an Excel spreadsheet, which is, like, I think in many instances super useful. I think for ChatGPT, just like one final thing is, it's interesting because ChatGPT is in this way a little bit more multifaceted. So you can have like a chat where you can input, visual data, you can input Excel spreadsheet data, and because of the larger token limits, you can actually work with much more data than Claude. So with Claude, you have to kind of feed your data into bite-sized chunks and sort of keep uploading it, processing it, and working that way. With ChatGPT, just your token limitations are much bigger, and so you can process much more data at scale. So I think that is pretty powerful.
Yeah, indeed. Where do you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I think just wanted to talk about how to get good output. So, like, I touched upon it in our conversation before, but I think, yeah, it's a good way for sellers to know what they need to really do.
Cool. Let's fire away. So, best ways to produce the most convenient and the optimal outputs.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's really important to understand that the more context you give into a prompt, the more you are going to get in terms of precision when it comes to the output. So you might presume that the large language model knows what ACOS is, and it might do. And in a lot of instances, it will do. But it is a question of, almost like how can I say, a habit and hygiene, I would say prompt hygiene, to include as much as possible detail and specification about exactly what you're giving to the large language model. So when I build a prompt that is designed to analyze data, based on the data that I'm trying to analyze, I always give context to the large language model about what this data is, what are the columns that it looks at, what are the specific, for example, if there is a formula like an ACOS field, what is that representing? If there's anything specific about the audience that this data, like this large language model, needs to know about. So the more context you give it, the more it will output correct data. The next thing that you need to always do is kind of give it almost like a step-by-step approach of how to go about the analysis. And this is where, what I was saying before, AI is not going to make you a good analyst. You need to be a good analyst when you use AI. You need to know the process of how the AI should go about analyzing that data. So step one, look at this and this. And these are the kind of the parameters CPC between this and this. Step two, output this type of data or calculate this. This is the formula you should follow. So, in a way, it shouldn't be really called data analysis because, yes, of course, AI can analyze the data, but if you really want good output, it's almost data processing, because all it does is it applies the analysis that you are kind of set into the prompt and processes that data in a way that it's already kind of ready for analysis, if that makes sense.
Okay, Joe, let's talk a little bit about, we've covered
use cases.
The use cases. Let's talk about categorization.
Yes. One of the things that I think Amazon sellers are massively underutilizing is the power of categorization and AI. So what I mean by categorization, I mean, when you are using, as an Amazon seller, you're using a lot of third-party tools like Jungle Scout or Helium 10 or Data Dive. There's so many different options out there and they give you great data. But the problem is that a lot of this data is sort of on either a keyword specific level or a product specific level. this is always a data which is kind of very micro, right? And this gives you only like sort of a snapshot of insight. Now, what I find really useful in order to understand, let's say, a category or a customer or a sort of a search behavior is to categorize and group specific, let's say, keywords or products by themes. A perfect example is, let's say, you're trying to understand something like a specific supplements category. Off the top of my head, the easiest example is the omega-3 category. There is omega-3 is a fairly simple product, but it's not, because there is vegan omega-3, there is normal omega-3, there is some of the features around omega-3 are whether it has EPA or DHA. It basically, you have different products that are there are 30, 60 or 120 packs. You can have a 60 pack, which is for 2 months or for 1 month, because it's based on how many times you have to take the tablet. So actually, when you really start digging into like one fairly simple category, with what it seems, you actually realize that there's a lot of sophistication and a lot of variables that you need to understand in order to understand, okay, what do customers actually like to purchase? And this is where, for example, I use, let's say, Django Scout or Helium 10. I pull a lot of this data in terms of, let's say, bestsellers in a category. And then I use the titles of the bestsellers in the category, and I ask AI to categorize them based on specific dimensions that I say, okay, like give me one column which is specifically around number of pills in a bottle. Give me one which is, let's say, tackling specific medical needs, and so forth and so on. So you can give it a lot of dimensions by which to categorize a specific, like, let's say, title, and then use that data to kind of build your own analysis of, all right, so actually within this category, the most popular product is let's say a 30-day pack of omega-3, but it's actually specifically the omega-3 that has both EPA and DHA and so forth. And so that really helps you understand, okay, like, am I positioned correctly in the market? Is my product missing something that people really want to have? Like, which are my competitors that are really winning, and not just on a brand by brand level, but on a kind of an aggregate level. And you can do the same kind of process on like analyzing keywords, basically around keyword themes. You can understand, is there a particular problem that people are trying to search for? And of course, you can infer that from the reviews, but you can also kind of double check, is there something that in terms of the search data is hiding as kind of like a valuable insight? So I think categorization is a really underutilized use case for AI in data analysis, and people should really do that.
Excellent. That was really, really good. Let's quickly summarize then what we've just covered, and then we'll close out the show, and people can know where you're based and your podcast, newsletter. Well, you're up to about 13,000 now.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
Thank
good.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You do a good job. What did we cover then? Let's go over the top down things we got for sellers to look out for, and takeaways from the podcast.
Okay, so in summary, you should definitely test different AI tools, and you should also map out your use cases of how you analyze data every day, and like what are the main insights you're looking for, and actually experiment like using either ChatGPT or Claude or even another tool, and see which one gives you good output. I think the really important thing is to be able to already set the parameters that you want for these tools to actually output, and the analysis that you are expecting from them, so that they give you the most precise possible output. I think there is just so much power in categorization of data on Amazon. And I think AI is just the easiest and fastest way to get that done and get much more aggregated data and much more kind of bigger insights as to what's happening in your categories, whether it's through a specific product feature or whether it's a specific brand or it's even pricing and so forth.
Joe, what's the best way to reach you?
Yes, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn, like Joe and the long ass surname. It will get you one result. That's me. Excellent. Or you can email me at joe@amazingwave.digital. So
I'll leave it there. Take care of yourself and your family. Much love, and I'll see you again.